The next book I want to deal with is the homemade cover. And this is made out of a cereal box. It's a large cereal box, but any cereal box will work. So this cereal box is not as large as this one. It doesn't matter. We're going to we're going to cut down the pages so that they're going to fit. First step, open up your box, and you're going to cut out the piece of cardboard you need. So it's either going to be the back of the box or it's going to be the front of the box, whichever one. It truly, truly doesn't matter. You're going to cut right down that corner and try to cut it as evenly as possible and as smoothly as possible, because then you will not have to go back and trim. You will be able to finish up the book. Oh, I went off a little bit. You'll be able to finish off the book without having to go back and trim the cover. And that one, I've already put a nick in, but I'm going to use it anyway. This one will be a little bit easier once the box is open flat. The whole process goes quicker and easier. We're going to save that in case we need it. We need to take the top flap and the bottom flap off the cover, or the cereal box. It's a good idea to trim it if you can. Make sure it's as nice and neat and smooth as you can get it, but we're not worried about being perfect because it's going to be covered. So then you want to measure your box, whatever size box it is, and I have an 11 and a quarter box. So we need 5 5/8. So I'm going to grab my pen. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/8. I'm going to mark it. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/8. I'm going to mark it. Make sure your mark is nice and clear so you can see it. And you're going to cut the top of the box in half. Now you'll notice my book is going to be pretty small. It's perfectly okay. You're just housing poetry. It doesn't have to be gigantic. Now, before we start covering the book, we need to prepare to bind it and so that it'll fold. So I'm going to take the ruler. I don't want to go a whole inch in because I think that'll be a little too much. So I want to just do a little less than an inch. This is not exact. It doesn't need to be. You're just trying to create a hinge. So you're going to take your scissors, open them up, hold your ruler really, really, really still. You're going to score it, which means scrape it, but do not cut through. We don't want this part cut off. We just want it to be bendy. So we're going to do that with both pieces of our cover. You want to put them as even as possible, so whatever width you decide, make both parts of the cover, the front and back, put this scoring the same size. Okay, next step, we need to cover our book with something on the outside. I'm going to go back to wallpaper because I think this is really pretty. And I have a lot of weird wallpaper samples, but you could use anything, including old wrapping paper. I was looking around the house and trying to figure out what can I use if I don't have any crafter supplies. And I found that I had a little bit of wrapping paper left on the roll from this Christmas, so I could use this wrapping paper. And I may do that. So what you need to do is you're going to glue the cover. After I have trimmed down my wrapping paper, I'm going to line it up with that score mark and glue it in place. I want the wrapping paper to be a little bit bigger than the cover. So once I've glued it down, then I'm going to go back and I'm going to cut the wrapping paper about an inch bigger than the cover of the book. And that will allow me to have nice clean lines, and it'll make the book look very finished. Now, while I'm at it, I might as well just cut the next piece out too, to make it a little bit easier. So now I have 2 pieces of wrapping paper, a little bit bigger than the cover. So I will get my glue mix ready and I will show you how to cover your book. Back with my glue. So I need to cover the entire piece of cardboard up to the score mark with diluted glue. Again, do not make it super liquidy, and do not put a lot of glue on there, because if you do, your paper is going to get all wrinkled and wobbly as it absorbs the liquid. So we don't want that, but we do want enough so that it will attach. So it's a little tricky, and you might want to try a sample on something else first before you go to your final cover. So once I've got it glued, I'm going to take my piece of paper. Now, if you're using a very directional paper, you want to make sure that the front and back of your cover match. You don't want to have the back of your cover upside down. So that's one more thing you're going to have to consider if your paper is very directional. So I glued that one down. That'll be the front cover of my book. And then if I'm looking at the back cover of my book, I need that to be up. And once again, glue the... And you can put it on a little thick. Just make sure you spread it out. Now I need to make sure that my trees are going up in the direction they need to. I need to line it up on that score mark and smooth it out. If I notice I've got air bubbles, now is a really good time, and really the only time you can fix it, to go over it with your thumb and make sure it's really smoothed down well. And I did it better with one than the other. So make sure it's really smoothed down. So now I have the 2 parts, front and back, and I can test and make sure that when I put them together, sure enough, my book is going to be the right way. So now I'm going to go to the back of the book where I can still see the cardboard, and I'm going to trim away so that it's about 1 inch. Do not trim it close. You're going to need this extra inch finish off your edges. So let's get those 2 front and back cover all set. Now this part is a little tricky. We want to cut a triangle at the corner of both of our pieces. And the reason we want that is so that when we fold it back, the corner is not bulky. And then again, we're going to glue. This time we're going to glue the paper. And then fold back. And then we're going to fold the next section. Glue it. And fold it back. Make sure you fold nice and straight, nice and tight. And the outside of one of the covers, this is my front cover, is done. And then the next thing I will do is cut a piece of paper that's the size of the cover to go over this side. For the inside of the covers, I'm going to use just copier paper. And you can use whatever you'd like. So you want to go back again, same thinned glue mixture, and you're going to cover up this part of the cover where you can still see the cereal box. You want to stay within the lines of the wrapping paper. You don't want to get too crazy with the glue. Same as usual. And you're going to put this, and that's going to be the inside of one of your covers. Here's the other cover. To assemble, you're going to need a hole punch. And it doesn't really, so make sure you've got your book proper end is up. You're going to put a mark, and it doesn't have to be exact. You just want to have it nicely spaced. So I'm going to go about here and about here. Take a hole punch, pop through. Put my covers back together so I make sure that everything lines up nicely. Put a mark, cover that. And then fold pieces of paper in half. Just copy your paper. You could use notebook paper. Again, you're going to put them in the book, line up your covers, and you're going to put a mark where you need to hole punch your paper. And you can put as many pieces of paper in there as you like. I would put at least one per poem. It's a little bit long, so you're just going to go back and trim. So you want all the pages of your book to fit nicely inside your cover. The final step, once I have the pages cut out to the right size and hole punched, and I've decided to switch over to white lined paper because my printer and I are still fighting, and so I'm not going to be able to print my poetry. I'm going to have to handwrite it. You do not have to do that if your printer is giving you a hard time, or hopefully your printer is not giving you a hard time. So I'm going to slide a rubber band through there. And then I went out in my yard and I found a nice straight stick. And so I run the stick in the rubber band, and it's much too long for the book right now, but I will trim it at the end. And I want it to go down so that it's to the edge of the book. And then this is a little bit tricky. You're going to, while you're holding everything together, run the elastic through the bottom hole. And you're going to have to open it up and slide the stick through. Once you've got the stick to a point where you like it, now some of the sticks are going to be a little straighter, some will be a little less straight, and I want to turn it so my stick will be adjusted like that. And then you can take clippers or scissors, because this you're using fairly thin sticks. This should be thinner than a pencil. And you're going to cut, and you have a nice, and then this is going to be a little bit trickier, so I'm going to trim, and then I'm going to bend it off. Now I'm going to have to use the scissors a little bit more. It certainly would be better with clippers, but it'll work. And then I have a beautiful cover for my poetry. And if you need to work the cover so that it folds a little bit, just don't fold too much so that it falls off, but you can work it a little bit to get it to be a little bit more flexible. And then you have a great place to house the poetry that you've written.